Welcome to the New Heights Show on Education. I'm Pamela Clark, founder and director of the New Heights Educational Group, and I'm here with David Smith, the founder of Silicon Valley High School, who has helped us get these podcasts produced and delivered to you.
Yes, Pamela, when we saw the great things that you and your army of volunteers were achieving at New Heights, we wanted to get involved. We're happy to work with you to leverage the internet to make quality education accessible and affordable to everyone every day.
Thank you, David. We appreciate Silicon Valley High School helping us to get these podcasts out to the hundreds of thousands of listeners from all over the world. So I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to the New Heights Show on Education. This is Pamela Clark, and I'm the founder and executive director of the New Heights Educational Group and the owner of this podcast. Today we have a very special show. It's our Christmas special, and we're actually featuring Heroes of Liberty. Before we introduce our guest, who will tell you about Heroes of Liberty, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning into our show for the holidays. Christmas is always a busy season for most, but a good Christmas radio show, whether you're busy shopping for gifts or for loved ones, or even for those who are not so busy, there's always time for a good radio show like ours. So, especially with this Christmas special. So, talking about shopping, for those shopping who can't seem to find the right gift or want a Christmas stocking stuffer for their children's Christmas stockings, how about some good books? Which will take me to my guest, Bethany Mandel, who is editor and board member of Heroes of Liberty. Bethany, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and why you're on our show today?
Sure. So, I mean, the short story is we would love you to buy our books and sort of make this part of your part of your bookshelves and your grandchildren's bookshelves and your friends' bookshelves. So my name is Bethany Mandel, and I am editing a series of children's books called Heroes of Liberty. The first 3 books that we've produced so far are about Thomas Sowell and Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett and former President Ronald Reagan. And the idea behind Heroes of Liberty is we wanted to create a series of biographies about great Americans and sort of teach morality and teach morals through these wonderful stories, because I think that that's the best way to sort of share what we believe in as a people and as individual families. And so we created these books with that in mind, sort of thinking back to, the wonderful children books of my childhood and your childhood, beautifully illustrated, really just artistically done very, very beautifully. And the prose is also really challenging and really just extremely well done and captivating. And that's sort of what we wanted to do. We wanted to hook kids in between the ages of around 6 to 12 and sort of share with them these wonderful stories and sort of share our morals and our love of freedom and liberty through stories, which we think is the best way to sort of reach kids where they are.
And that's great. And you guys had donated to our organization, originally donated a soft cover and one of the little figurines that come with it. And I love that. And then recently you guys sent out one of each, or actually 2 of each of the books that you're talking about as hardbacks. And I thought they were just beautiful. They're just beautifully done.
Yeah.
So who is your founder? Who is the creator of this idea of Heroes of Liberty?
So it was a group of us, and we sort of sat down and decided, that there's this hole in the children's literature market, and we're sort of concerned lovers of liberty and lovers of freedom, and we decided, we're watching what's happening with children's literature, with Scholastic, but with a lot of other New York Central publishing houses where they're sort of pushing an agenda that we're not comfortable with and we don't think is appropriate for children. And we're just kind of like, well, why don't better books exist, and why don't both in terms of quality and also in terms of sort of the morals and the values and the stories that they tell. Why don't better books exist? And that we sort of set out to create that. And so these first three books are our first venture into this market, but I don't think they'll be the last. We've had tens of thousands of books sold so far, and we've only been selling them for a month. So
That's
we've
awesome.
been, yeah, I mean, it's really sort of proved to the market that there is a hunger and a thirst for this kind of content. And so we plan into 2022 to start releasing more books. And so the next book that we're hoping to release in February is John Wayne, and we have Margaret Thatcher in the works. We have Douglas MacArthur. Mark Twain is in the works. We've been talking about doing C.S. Lewis as well. These sort of wonderful figures from our past, and also present. I mean, Thomas Sowell and Amy Coney Barrett are in our present, but yeah, I mean, they
Right.
really exemplify everything that we want our kids to grow up believing, and who we want our kids to be when they grow up.
So you do have a CEO though, right? Because I know you
Yeah.
said there was a group of you. Is there a specific CEO?
Yeah. So there. Yeah, so it's based out of there's a publishing house in Israel, and there's an Israeli publishing house. It's sort of, you have to have a publishing arm. So they're sort of providing a lot of that heavy lifting with finding printers and illustrators and all of those kinds of things. They're the experts in the actual publishing arena.
Wow. Wow. So how did you find out about them originally?
So it's a small world, and I am sort of really well known among conservative circles as someone who's really passionate about education and children's literature. I separately, for a while now, have had a YouTube channel about the homeschool philosophy that we follow. I'm a mother of 5 as well. I probably should have mentioned that, and I homeschool my oldest children. And so I have a sort of long-standing YouTube channel that I don't post to very frequently, but it's a labor of love for me, and it's called Jewish Charlotte Mason Homeschooling, if anyone's interested. And I talk about my love of children's literature and the importance of children's literature, and sort of the decline in quality, both storytelling, illustrations, and then just sort of morality. I've talked a lot about that in the past. And so mutual friends sort of hooked us up and said, we know of this publisher who wants to do this. Do you want to be involved? And I was like, oh my God, that was like created for me from God. Yes, I'd love to be involved. And so now I'm editing the books because more than anything, I love to just critique children's books. And so now I get to do it and get paid.
Right. Well, that kind of brings us to our next question about your previous experience and knowledge and training. Did you bring to the Heroes of Liberty in order for the company to be a success?
Yeah, so I'm a writer. That's sort of what I've been doing for the last probably 10 years or so. So I'm a conservative writer, and I write a lot about the intersection between politics and parenting. And so I've been writing a lot about sort of COVID and kids for the last 2 years. But I've written pretty much at any publication you can think of. I've written there: the New York Times, the New York Post, the Washington Post, the New York Daily News, the Atlantic. Right now I'm contributing writer at Deseret News, based out of Utah, and so and also the Spectator as well. And so I've written for every major publication in America pretty much, um, and
Wow.
uh, and I also own literally thousands of children's books, and I homeschool my children. And so this writing and children's literature, this is what I've been doing for the last 10 years of my life, and I've been homeschooling my children. They've never really gone to school, and so I'm not sure when you sort of count when I've become homeschooling, but um, my
Right.
oldest is 8 years old, so I don't know how long I've been technically homeschooling. But
Right. I gotcha.
yes, so
Yeah.
I've read thousands and thousands of children's books over the course of my parenting life for the last 8.5 years. And so yeah, it was really a perfect fit because I'm very immersed in that world of children's literature just because of homeschooling my children. But I'm also really aware of sort of what's going on in the world of children's literature from a sort of political perspective, and sort of the ideological rot, and not just ideological rot, but the rotten quality as well. Um, and so those sorts of things, I feel like I was quite uniquely positioned to sort of take on this role, and it's one that I'm really excited for. The sort of end result that we would like to accomplish is sort of creating a more moderate and wholesome version of Scholastic, and having a whole bunch of series of books. And this and I think that we will. I mean, we've sold tens of thousands of books in the last 3.5 weeks. So there's definitely a hunger
Wow.
for this.
Yeah, I know, and there is for just learning in general, but
Yeah.
in our history, and I know we're partners with Hillsdale College, and
Oh,
they're doing a fantastic job as well. I mean,
yeah. Yeah.
their
I've been there a few
courses,
times.
and oh, it's
Yeah. I
it's wonderful the work they're
but
doing.
being on campus is like stepping back in time, in the best way possible. I one of my favorite stories about Hillsdale. I went there with well, I went there twice. I went there when I was 9 months pregnant with my third child. And it was like the last possible week that I was technically allowed to fly. And he was 9 pounds at birth. So I was very big at like 35 weeks pregnant. And everyone opened the
Wow.
door for me. And it's really sad that this is notable, but I want to say it. Every single person
Yeah.
made eye contact with me, which is something that doesn't
Wow.
happen anymore with college students. Everyone called me ma'am. Everyone held the door open for me. Everyone was really kind and thoughtful. And then I went back to campus with that baby because he was nursing, and so I was sort of tied to him. And he was about 4 months old, and my phone just died. Like on when I landed in Chicago, my phone just stopped working, and I had a
Oh my
whole day of
God.
meetings there. And I couldn't access my email. I couldn't access Facebook. I couldn't access my text messages. And I had a babysitter set up there, and had no way of contacting her. And so the only thing I had access to was Twitter. And so I posted a tweet, and I have a large number of Twitter followers. And so I said, if anyone is at Hillsdale and wants to babysit my baby today, please send me a message privately. And I got like 7 or 8 messages, and I gave him to uh, a group of young women who were all living together right off of campus, like steps away from campus. And they figured out with their schedule how they could pass him between them, um, depending on who had class or whatever. And we sort of sat down with their schedule and coordinated when he would come to me to nurse. And I was in meetings with all of these Hillsdale senior administrators all day. And the girls would keep on
Yeah.
popping in with him to nurse, and I sort of told them the story over the course of the day, because we had all day meetings, and they were like, well, how did you find these girls? I'm like, I just posted a tweet. And they were like, you just handed them your baby? And I'm like, well, I mean, Hillsdale kids, like if they're admitted here, I trust them with my baby. So yes. And they did a great job, and
Wow.
everyone was good and happy, and survived the day in a beautiful way. But it's just like that really speaks to just how much faith I have in Hillsdale and the students, that I just handed my baby to people that sent me a message on Twitter that I had never interacted with prior. But they were Hillsdale
Yeah.
students, so I handed them over.
They're wonderful. They're
Yeah.
wonderful. Oh, just love them. But we offer all their courses through our site, through our free and discounted course page on our annex, and we've been a long-standing partner with them now for years. I don't even know how long. But I don't think I had mentioned to you that I was a homeschool mom for 13 years, so
Oh,
I know
wonderful.
exactly what you're talking about. I totally get it. I
There's a
did
lot
all
of
of that
books.
too. So
Yeah. And I
that's
love,
right. Love books. Love the
yeah,
smell of books. Love
yep.
holding a book.
Yep. And that's
It's not
something
just
that I
about the.
love about the curriculum at Hillsdale too. So we follow the Charlotte Mason curriculum in our house. And so it's literature based. Like
Oh.
that's all we do is read
Hmm.
out loud. And that's something that I love about the Hillsdale curriculum. I wish, had I known where the conversation was going, I would have dug it out. But I have the entire 300-page curriculum printed out, and I had it printed and I had it spiral bound because I refer to it all the time. And there's a ton of overlap between the books that we're reading and their curriculum. I'm basically following their curriculum. And it's, I mean, the bedrock of an education is literature, and they do it beautifully. And I mean, I kind of, I wish I could go back in time and get a Hillsdale education myself. And I mean, that's what's amazing about the courses, that you can.
Yeah.
But they have such a focus on great books. And, these are the books that you have to read to be sort of a literate American. And we don't care what your major is, you have to read these books. And that's something that I really love about Hillsdale.
So now they're featuring these. Is that what you're saying?
No, they're not. I mean, if you want to call them and tell them they should, I'd love that. I'm just saying, I think we're reading from the same script. We all love literature. We all understand the importance of literature, and the importance of great stories, and the importance of sort of having the right kinds of heroes, and
history in general.
Yeah,
the truth of history.
Speaking of Hillsdale, Dr. Arndt's favorite person in the whole world is going to be one of our heroes, Winston Churchill.
Oh, how neat.
I'm so excited for that one. I should email Dr. Arndt directly and be like, hello, Dr. Arndt. I have a children's book made for you, sir.
I'm sure they would welcome this. I would think it'd be right up their alley, because when I was looking at it, it really reminded me of it. I mean, there's only a very small handful of people that are advocating for our history right now, and for teaching the truth, and against indoctrination, and so, I mean, I could count them on literally one hand. So I mean, now we're your pinky finger. It'd be Hillsdale College, the classic learning test. Love, fan of that.
Yep, I'm going on his podcast, actually.
Oh, he's wonderful.
I'm going
to them since almost the beginning.
Oh, I love it. So I'm going on his podcast in a couple weeks to talk about Heroes of Liberty.
Right after he partnered with Homeschool Legal Defense, I think they had hooked us up.
Okay.
And
I'm a member of HSLDA.
And as soon as I seen they partnered with them, I was like, looked into it. And I know that the classic learning test was an answer to many parents' prayers.
Yeah.
Because it was really different. And I don't care for the SAT or ACT or any of those tests. So I really advocate strongly for the classic learning test. And we were, before the pandemic, we were giving the tests in this area. And
funny.
They're wonderful people. Yeah, and but literally you can count on one hand. So I just named the top 4 that advocate for parent rights, liberty, and sharing knowledge and history of what's made America great. But then, I mean, I do think world history is also important, but because it also teaches the mistakes that have been made by other cultures and so forth, and also things that we can learn from them that were successes. But so backing up a little bit, I know you said a group of people got together and talked about creating these books. Were you part of that initial group, or how did you get involved with Heroes of Liberty?
I mean, I was involved pretty much from the start. And we just sort of, I mean, exactly what you said, like we saw this really gaping hole in the market. It's hard as a parent with young children to sort of, I mean, so the book that I love talking about most is the Amy Coney Barrett book. And so I own a lot of books about young women. I have an 8-year-old daughter who has a list of future jobs that is like a mile long. She wants to be an entomologist, a geologist, a nurse. I honestly, I couldn't even list the current list because it's ever evolving. And one of the things she says she wants to be is a mom of 6. She's put the number at 6. We have 5 kids, so I think that she's trying to make some hints, but we'll see. So we own a lot of books about like really impressive women, women who were like, there's a book called Shark Lady that we love, and it's a woman who studied sharks. We have a book that's about a woman for about 100 years old who was sort of the entomologist in at some like London Zoo or something. I should remember more because I've read this book 300 times. We have a lot of books about Katherine Johnson, who's the famous NASA scientist, and we love all of these books and they're so wonderful. But none of them, I think, none of them are mothers. And if they were, the books never mention it. And for me personally, and that my motherhood, I mean, I do a lot of impressive things. Like I write for the New York Post, the New York Daily News, and then the New York Times, the New York Post. Like I do all of these things. But when you ask me what my job is, I will tell you I'm a mother first, because that is the most sacred duty that has been entrusted to me. And so, when my daughter is reading all of these books about careers and sort of picturing her life and in the future of her life, none of them mention motherhood. And this Amy Coney Barrett book, it talks about the fact that she's a very successful Supreme Court justice and sort of the trajectory of her life from the beginning to now. But it places a strong emphasis on her motherhood, and it talks about how she prioritizes her family and how on every birthday of her children she bakes them a birthday cake, which is something I don't do. She has 7 children. And it's a really powerful sort of message that young girls are not getting now, that you can do it all and also be a mother, and that motherhood is important, and that motherhood is sacred and it's holy. And that was the thing that she took from that book more than anything. And I love hearing her talk about it, because she says, yeah, she's a judge and all, and she's a mom, and she's really excited about talking about Amy Coney Barrett's motherhood. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, that's really neat. Well, we're going to take a short commercial break, and then we'll be right back.
Hello, listeners. If you enjoyed the New Heights show on education or donate to our organization, please visit www.newheightseducation.org. While you're there, check out our online store at new-heights-education-group.myshopify.com.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Pamela Clark, and I'm here interviewing Bethany Mandel, who's with Heroes of Liberty. And we were just before the commercial break, we were talking about motherhood and the book. I'm sorry, Comey. What was it? The title of it again?
So we were talking about the Amy Coney Barrett book, and that's one of the first 3 books that we've released.
Right. So I haven't read that one yet. I'm excited to do so. Like I said, they're just beautiful, but I haven't had a chance to read it yet. So that's exciting to hear that it has that element in it. That's neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
it's a strong undercurrent. And one of the things I also really loved about that book was it talks about her decision to adopt from Haiti. And after reading that book, we've spoken a little bit about the concept of adoption and foster care and all of those things, just because we have people in our lives that have done those things. They've fostered and they've adopted. But it's not appropriate to ask those people sort of specifics of what happened, what went into that decision, all of those things. And so this was a really wonderful, and it made me realize that this is something we actually should be reading more of also. But this was a really wonderful introduction to the idea of adoption. And after we read it, my 8-year-old daughter was like, maybe I want to adopt. I think it's such a wonderful thing that she took him out of that really just difficult situation in his home country of Haiti after the earthquake, and gave him a home and loved him like his mother, like she loves all of her children the same. And that was a really powerful message for my daughter. And it made me realize that there's a hole in, what we've been reading to her, and we need more of that kind of content.
Wonderful. So what skills do you have which helped launch these books?
So my personal
Mhm.
skills are talking.
I know
I'm
you
very good.
talked about a little bit.
I'm very good at talking. So I've spoken to Fox News and Megyn Kelly most recently, and so that's sort of I'm the public face of the company, and it's a bizarre skill to have, but I think it is a skill, talking.
Definitely.
And my other skill is
Mm.
being critical, and so that's my job as the editor, to sort of sit down and say, I don't like this scene. I think this scene needs to be expanded. I think that this topic jumps too quickly, and we have a fabulous team of writers, and I'm merciless. And I say, I don't like this part. I don't like this part. I love this part. This is great. What is this illustration going to look like? I think we should have a map here. And so I get to sort of just critique everyone else's really hard work until I think it's perfect. So it's really a perfect job for me. I can be critical of other people, and then I can just run my mouth in the media.
There you go. Those are all skills. You're right.
I guess so.
So, did you did Heroes of Liberty face any obstacles when they were starting up?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest obstacle for us was finding illustrators. And this is something that I believe very deeply. Children's
Mhm.
books need to be really beautifully illustrated, and I'm going to absolutely massacre this author's name. He's a Japanese writer, Gaio Fugiyama. Do you know who I'm
Okay.
talking about?
I know
Um,
I don't. I'm not familiar.
oh gosh, if you have young children in your life,
Yeah, I do.
you have to grab his books. So Fujikawa, that's his name, and he's a writer and he's an illustrator, and he's a very classic writer and illustrator, and I own literally every single one of his books. And they are it was actually funny. My mother, this part isn't funny, but my mother died when I was on the younger side, and so I have a big tote
Mm.
box from my childhood, and I opened it up, and I had accidentally duplicated a lot of books that I owned from my childhood, just because I found them and I was like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And then I opened the box and realized, like, oh, that's probably why I thought it was beautiful, because I grew up reading that and I didn't remember it. So now I have doubles of a couple of
Oh.
these books. But he's a very classic, beautiful illustrator. Some of my favorite books of his are A Child Book of Poems, an A to Z picture book, Fairy Tales and Fables, Mother Goose. And they're my favorite books from my childhood, and they're my children's favorite books now. My kids, even my 2-year-old, gravitates towards his books in a way that she doesn't with the others. She slept with one of them for months. So I own all of his books, and the underlying thread of all of his books they are some of the most beautiful illustrations you'll ever see in your life. And so this idea that
Wow.
illustrations in children's books are just as important, if not more important than the prose, is something that I really strongly believe. And so when we were trying to find illustrators, we said, this is not something we're going to skimp on. We're going to do it right, and it's going to cost us a lot more money, but that's okay, because this is the product that we want to put out. And so we approached, the best illustrators in America, and they heard that they were going to be illustrating books about Thomas Sowell and Ronald Reagan and Amy Coney Barrett, and they said, no, thank you. We do not want that. And they were scared
Really?
about, yeah, they were scared about getting canceled. And so we had to go to illustrators. And so as a result, we have illustrators from around the world. We have illustrators from Brazil, from Nigeria, from Bulgaria. And they're
Wow.
incredibly talented, and they're not afraid of the American cancel culture. But that was a really, really big challenge in the beginning, was sort of stepping out of the English speaking world, and stepping away from people who might have a familiarity with Ronald Reagan or Amy Coney Barrett, and sort of trying to find the best illustrators from around the world, and having to overcome really significant language barriers to do so. And now
Yeah.
we sort of have a stable of illustrators that we love. There's another book coming out. I don't remember the release date, but it'll be early in 22, about Alexander Hamilton. And that book,
Mm.
the illustrator is just stunning. This guy has no business illustrating children's books, but I would like no one to tell him that, because I want him to illustrate all of our children's books. But
That's
it's
great.
just beautiful. I mean, there's one scene from his childhood on the island. He grew up in the Caribbean, and and there's one scene where I was like, oh my God, like you can see the facial expression on that woman in the background, like that you can't look away from her face, and
Yeah.
she's just, she's right in the background, you're not really focused on it, but it's a really powerful illustration. Just all the illustrations are just really wonderful, and we're blown away. And I think that there's a reason for everything. And while it was hard in the beginning, I think that we found the right people and we did the right work. And it presented us challenges in the beginning, but our hard work paid off. I mean, that's kind of the theme of Thomas Sowell book. You put the hard work in,
Mm-hmm.
and then you reap the benefits.
Right.
Um, so
Well,
I
one of
think
the
that that's
things
what
I
we
noticed
did.
with that book, one of the things I noticed with the Thomas Sowell book was that there were two different writers. Like you have two versions of that book, two different authors.
Oh, so those are pen names. Because it was such a sort of collaborative group effort, we
Mm-hmm.
every book has a pen name. So I don't even know who
Oh.
who we gave credit for that book,
Oh.
but it would have been too hard
Okay.
to sort of put one name on it. So we just kind of like put a name.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So you talked about the challenges in development or with the illustrators. Was there any challenges in launching it or getting a
I mean,
publisher to pick it up or?
so I mean that's why we went with the Israeli publisher, because he had the
Mm-hmm.
sort of capability to do that. I mean, I think we had the normal supply chain issues that everyone in the world is currently having. We wanted the figurines to be out by Christmas time, and they're not. So that was
That was tough.
frustrating. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think every company has sort of hiccups, but I think the wonderful thing about what we're doing is everyone is really ideologically on the same page, and we understand the mission that's in
Mm-hmm.
front of us, and sort of the trust that parents are putting in us to sort of share our morals and our ideas about the past and the future.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been easy to work together.
That's important.
Yeah.
Really important. So Heroes of Liberty publishes books about famous people considered to be heroes, and I guess you've already named some of the books that you've already published. So it's just those three, correct?
Yeah, so far. And then the next book that we're planning on coming up with is John Wayne in February. So
February.
that'll
Okay.
be a fun one. There's a lot of talk sort of in the in popular culture about toxic masculinity, and this is sort of, we chose John Wayne as sort of a direct response to that. And
Oh wow.
he has a non-toxic masculinity, and I think it's, as much as I love the Amy Coney Barrett book for the messages that it sends my daughter, I love the John Wayne book for the message that it will send my sons. It's how a man should be and how a man should behave, and behaving in a moral and upright way. And it's going to be a wonderful message for young boys, as will, I think, honestly, the Mark Twain book, because it introduces Mark Twain to this audience who, I mean, we're seeing Mark Twain getting canceled a little bit now, and not just canceled, but also people are just not reading him enough. And so this is sort of an introduction that I plan on using, like me personally, in my homeschool. We're going to read the Mark Twain book,
Right.
and then we're going to read Huck Finn. And I hope other parents
So
do
that's
too.
neat. I think for me personally, my grandmother raised me through formative years. She was pretty conservative. I mean, she was raised a Mennonite, which in turn I was
Oh,
kind of
wow.
raised a Mennonite. So, but then she became a Baptist, which is such a difference, there. But she still had these root ideas of what America was, and if you saw something that you didn't think was right, and if you could change it, that you had a duty to do so. And I've kind of inherited that in a sense from her. But being raised by someone, like a generation, like I was a grandmother, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was kind of raised on all of those classic stories, and she had like this beautiful fairy tale book. I can't remember. I have it I have it still, and I just loved it. It had all the classics in it, very beautifully done. And actually, I had it looked at one time for just to have an appraisal on it. And back in it would have been around 89 or 90 when I had it appraised. They said it was worth like a couple $100, just one book alone, because it had colored pages in it when it was a time when that was illegal to do when this book was
interesting.
made. But I still have it. I want to buy another one because I mean I have grandchildren, and I want to make sure that each of my grandchildren have a copy of this fairy tale book that's very colorful and has a lot of different stories in it. And but there was like these biblical children's stories too, and my I can't think of all the names of all the authors and all the publishers or who put what out, but they were very much part of my childhood. So when I finally had a chance to really look at Heroes of Liberty, I was really blown away. And then when the books came, they were just beautiful. My husband, he was here at the time that I opened them, and he's like, "Wow, those are gorgeous."
Yeah.
So I'm telling everybody, you should really check these books out because we're not exaggerating the beauty of them, and they're just gorgeous, just gorgeous.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to even sharing them with my grandchildren and whoever else wants to have a story.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the thing that excites us the most, that we've had such a successful, initial launch, but we know that readers like you are going to go to their friends and say, you have to pick up these books. They're fantastic. And so, I think that we're just going to grow exponentially once sort of word of mouth hits and people start talking about it, where we all talk about books, Facebook groups and, at play dates. And I think that there's going to be a really sort of slow burn on these for a while where people are just, catching on more and more until eventually we sort of hit the mainstream.
So how many do you think you'll be publishing a year?
I mean, the goal is 100 a year. We have sort of a business.
That's
yeah.
lofty.
Yeah, we have a business plan in mind, but for now, for the initial probably 2 years, the goal is one a month. And so starting in February, we're going to start with we're starting with John Wayne in February, and then we're plugging through one a month. And I know I've personally had laid eyes on 6 or 7, so like in the future, 6 or 7 future books after John Wayne. So we're definitely going to get through 22, I think, with all the content that we already have, and we're not even into the year yet. So,
are you looking for help? Like, are you looking for more writers, or
a little bit, not quite yet. I think that our main writer is getting a little burned out, and so that's why it's sort of been a team effort. So we've brought on a couple of fellow homeschool moms, honestly, that I'm friendly with, and they heard I was working on this project, and they were like, "Can I get involved?" So we have a couple of writers sort of coming down the pike that we're going to work with in the process. And the goal eventually is to have a whole stable of writers. But for now, we're starting slow, and we're trying to be really deliberate and really careful because we want the quality and we want the content to be just, what we want on our library, in our library shelves and our bookshelves. That's what we want to produce. And so we're trying to be really careful and really deliberate at the outset.
You want the truth of the history of each person.
Yeah. And just well done books. And that, that takes a lot of time and attention to detail. And so, I think the harder thing for us is trying to pinpoint who we want the heroes to be. And so, I've talked about a couple of them, Mark Twain, John Wayne, Margaret Thatcher, Winston Churchill. I think C.S. Lewis is in there. I've heard rumblings of C.S. Lewis a few times. But I think there's, conversations about who constitutes a hero of liberty. And so those are fun sort of conversations to have and fun debates to have, because we're kind of like, talk about Abraham Lincoln. Well, he did this. Well, he did this, and he will be one of our heroes of liberty. But because we're going to have a president's series and a founding father series, um, but it's they're fun debates. I'll say that.
Have you ever thought, and I know this is kind of out there a little bit, but as I'm listening to you talk, things come to mind, of course, because, I'm a thinker and a planner, kind of like you are. But have you ever thought of doing the Statue of Liberty?
Oh, that's interesting. No, we've stuck to humans, but that's a really interesting.
Because what
tangent,
symbol has been greater in calling, our ancestors here? Just a thought.
I think a lot of it is also like, who do we feel like? I mean, we are a for-profit. We're trying to make profit, and so I think we're also kind of looking at the children's book market and seeing where the holes are. And we've produced the first children's book about Thomas Sowell, the first children's book about Amy Coney Barrett. Meanwhile, there's like 27 about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I mean, I've never come across children's books about Margaret Thatcher or Winston Churchill. I think that there might be some variations of those in the Who Is books, but I don't find those to be very well produced, to be totally frank. I feel like they're sort of just they're Xeroxed. They kind of like pick a couple facts. I mean, that's just my impression. There's a line of books called Who Is, and they just kind of list facts. They're not very well written. They're not well illustrated. They're not what Charlotte Mason homeschoolers, the term that we use is living books. They're not living books. They're not captivating. They're not telling a lesson. They're not teaching a moral. It's just a bunch of facts and a few pictures. And so if there are books about Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher, it's that kind of stuff. And so we're sort of really producing the first books of this kind.
Yeah, I can see that. So I know you said that you have a publisher in Israel. So they create everything there and then ship them to you here in the United States, or how does that work, the publishing?
I think that they're printed physically somewhere here. I honestly don't know where they're actually physically printed, but it's a really fun sort of collaborative effort that is very Google Doc based, because we have illustrators all around the world. So we have illustrators in Nigeria and Bulgaria and Brazil, and I think 6 continents now is where is what we're, we just got to get somebody on Antarctica, maybe at McMurdo Station somewhere. We'll write a book about Shackleton. Somebody will draw a picture from us from Antarctica from McMurdo Station. But yeah, I mean, we have writers and editors and illustrators from every continent. So it's a real collaborative effort worldwide. And the hardest part about that is the time zones.
Yeah. And we deal with that here at New Heights, the educational group, because we have all volunteers that work here, and they're from all over the world. I think there's 92 of us right now.
Wow.
And literally from all over the world. So we deal with that on a regular basis. But it's you build relationships and they become like family. They're just I work with the greatest bunch of people that you could ever hope to work with, and they're also positive and loving towards each other and excited to work with different people from different cultures. And but I understand what you mean completely, and also in the languages as well. But that kind of stuff, it's helped me become a better person, because it's helped me with patience and not just assuming, like, if you misunderstand something, I mean, it could be a cultural thing, and so you really can't have an ego. You can't have an ego. You can't have, because you're dealing with people from many different beliefs. And I try never to take anything personal, and I try to make time to talk to each person if there's ever an issue, which is pretty rare actually, because volunteers are a special bunch of people. They're not like the regular, for-profit. We're not 501c3 nonprofit, but volunteers are just special. They're special
Yeah.
breed of human, you know. So, but we got to take another quick commercial break, and we will be right back.
This podcast is brought to you by Silicon Valley High School, the world's fastest growing, video-based, self-paced, teacher-supported, fully accredited online school that's recommended by more than 96% of students. Take individual courses at just $95 each, or earn your high school diploma at any age. Check us out at svhs.co.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Pamela Clark, and I'm with Bethany Mandel, and we're talking about Heroes of Liberty, which is an all-new series of books that are coming out. And we're learning about each other as we go through the interview. And I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I think it's pretty exciting, and I'm excited about these books. And I know that you've talked about different people from all over that are helping with illustrations and these writers. How many people in all are working on these? And is there anybody you want to name?
So honestly, I think everyone sort of wants to stay behind the scenes because and I also don't want to name anyone because then I don't want to insult anyone. But gosh, I mean, I couldn't even put a number on it. Probably a dozen sort of core people between, the accountants to the illustrators to the sort of project coordinators to the CEO to myself, sort of different like media arms or whatever. But I would say it's probably like 15 people is probably a good guess. And we and I think I want to rewind for a second and sort of answer one of your other questions. What challenges that we've faced. One of the other ones is we've had a little bit of a hard time getting on Amazon. And so we're selling the books directly on our website, heroesofliberty.com. Yeah. It's a complicated process with how you're categorized and all those things. And so
Really?
we've just been selling on our website, heroesofliberty.com. That's it. And so that's it. It's even more impressive when you consider the fact that we've sold as many books as we have and not on Amazon, which Amazon sells 80% of books now. And we've sold 0 on Amazon. So only available on our website.
Wow. Man, and it's because of the topic? Is that the issue of why they won't?
I don't know. I haven't been involved in those conversations directly because they don't really relate to the work that I'm doing. But I think that there was some debate about how we're categorized, and they've sort of categorized us as political, and we're not political. Like if we're political, then children's biographies of Ruth Bader Ginsburg are also political, and they don't characterize them as such. So I think there's been a little bit of a debate about sort of how we're categorized and also just sort of the technical, on the back of every book, you can see me, but your viewers can't, but there's supposed to be like a USB thing on the corner. And so, or ISBN, that's what I'm looking for. ISBN. And so it's been a little complicated getting that. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah. So yeah.
That's not cool. That's really not that you had those issues. I mean,
yeah. So that's been a big challenge because Amazon owns the market. But in a way, I think everything is a blessing in disguise. And I think that was a blessing in disguise because we have, the contact information of every single person who's bought our book, whereas we might not have that if we were selling on Amazon. And so we can sort of remarket what we're doing. That's like the technical term. We can remarket to all the people who have bought our books and tell them about, you bought our 3 books. We hope you enjoyed them. Now John Wayne is available. Now Margaret Thatcher is available. And so we can sort of send those emails and say, check out the new book. You loved the first 3, we hope. And here's the next one. And so I think it honestly might have been a blessing in disguise because we can keep in touch with our customers in a much easier way.
Yeah. This is interesting. I don't know if you've ever, it's way off topic, sorry. But have you ever heard of Slave City?
No?
Well, it's something I follow and I love. And he's a person that's kind of, he talks about nutrition, what's good for you and what products to stay away from, why to stay away from them, things that are good for your body, and so forth. And him and his wife are just freaking fantastic. But anyways, they originally went to HGTV and pitched their idea. And he does all these videos during the week. Sometimes they're cooking with their little 2-year-old daughter, who's Rose, and she actually has her own workstation, and she's quite the little cook for her being 2 years old. But he pitched his idea to HGTV. They said no, and he just does it all himself through his own site, Slave City.
Wow.
And he has like 3 million followers. 3 million
Wow.
on his
That's incredible.
own. So when you're talking, I'm like thinking of these types of stories that I know of that people will turn their nose up at, and they're like, well, no, because they don't get it. Just because somebody tells you no does not mean you should stop. We should follow our dreams and our passions, and we should see projects through, because we don't know why we're called to do those things, but the good Lord does.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Amen.
we got to follow our paths, no matter what those look like, and doors will open. Doors will open when we do that. So that says a lot about what you guys have already accomplished on your own, and you're going to reap the benefit and Amazon, just like HGTV. They're kicking themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think eventually, I hope eventually we'll get there, but I think it's honestly in our best interest, at least in the beginning, to have as much contact as we can with our customers, and I think it'll help us with the launch.
Oh, definitely. I'm sure. So along with the books, you touched a little bit on the figurine, and we received one, the Thomas Sowell. But tell us a little bit about the figurine idea, and who thought that up, and why they thought to include that with the books. I mean, what's the vision for the figurines?
I mean, I think that we were thinking, what would be a great gift. And to be quite honest with you, I haven't really seen the figurines because my husband stole them and brought them to work with him. So I feel like it was a good decision because my husband stole them. And so I think the thinking is, and I think it's correct, that, it's a product that is interesting to the whole family. And the books are wonderful for the kids. And I mean, I don't know, maybe we're strange, maybe we're a strange family, but my husband just loved the figurines, and I love the figurines too. And my kids also, my kids are very imaginative, and they love sort of imagining things. I think I probably would have gone with like a plush doll versus a figurine, but the difference, I think, and I think that it was probably the right decision, is that the figurine sort of appeals to everyone, whereas a doll only appeals to children. But it's sort of it's a whole family gift, and people might not have kids in their lives that they want to buy for, but I mean, who doesn't want a figurine on their desk of Thomas Sowell?
So was that part of the initial talk between all of the people that wanted these books? Was it part of the vision, the original vision, or did it come later?
I think we just were trying to make it appeal to as many people as possible. And, Thomas Sowell and Amy Coney Barrett and Ronald Reagan are heroes of, adults. And we want them to be adult. We want them to be the heroes of children as well, for children as well. And, we wanted a way to sort of make an interesting, fun product for adults. And so, and we thought that the figurines might be a fun way to do that. And we've seen sort of the success of figurines, sort of in the general market. And so we just thought it would be a fun way to, reach another audience with the same sort of message of, these are heroes, and, there's someone who you want a figurine on your desk.
So, and I know that for the plushes, for the idea of plushes, I mean, I know that was it Kohl's, they already do that where they sell a book and a
Yeah.
plushie that goes with the book. So that's kind
Yeah.
of been done. So it was really brilliant. It was a smart idea to do a figurine. I mean, and there is definitely a market in general because every movie now, even
Yeah.
video games, like
Yeah.
characters, they make these, they make the statues, the
Yep.
you know what I'm talking about, the
Yeah.
figurines for
No,
each
totally. Yeah.
of the
The action
characters.
figures.
And
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 the action figures. Yeah. So that's been a market for years, or they wouldn't be doing that. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not a
No,
bad
I
idea.
think it was the right decision. My
Yeah.
husband happens to have a figurine collection that's like the most, eclectic figurine collection in the world. He has Jeff Goldblum, the guy, the actor, and he has
Yep.
Yitzhak Rabin and Golda Meir, and now he has Thomas Sowell and Ronald Reagan, and he has a million figurines of Queen Elizabeth. He's like a big
Really.
monarchist. Yeah, my husband's a really funny guy. I like him a lot. And it's funny because you look at his desk and it tells you a lot about who he is, who he wants to collect the figurines of. It tells you a lot about who they are. And I think it really sort of made his figurine collection a little more full circle because he's got Jeff Goldblum, he's got the Queen, and but these figurines didn't exist. And I got him.
Yeah.
There's an Israeli company that produces a whole bunch of sort of Israeli heroes, and so I bought
Yeah.
him for Hanukkah last year. That was his or birthday present. I don't remember. Um, so now he has sort of the American ones too, and that's why he
I'll be
like
darned.
they came and he instantly stole Amy Coney Barrett and Ronald Reagan and Thomas Sowell, and he was like, "This will go on my desk at work alongside Queen Elizabeth." And I'm like, "Okay, great."
Wow. Now, my next question is about audiobooks, or even the idea. And I had this week because we're having we have a online reading program, virtual reading program. It's in different tiers, and we're growing it from our third tier to our fourth and fifth. So now every age group of student is covered, and we have like a list of books on that page of what we'd be pulling from to read to the public online, and we'll create the video. It'll be a video, and then people can go on YouTube and they can watch it and follow along with the book. But
Mhm.
have you thought about doing audiobooks, but maybe even online readings to introduce people to these stories?
So a little bit, but not quite yet, because I think 50% of what we want to accomplish is the illustrations, and we think that's such an important component.
Mm-hmm.
But I love audiobooks. My daughter has it's not an Alexa, it's not connected to the internet. I can control it on my phone. It's called a Sonos. But my daughter has a Sonos speaker in her room and she listens to audiobooks in there all the time. And so I love the idea of, I mean, eventually, one of my long-term visions for Heroes of Liberty, when we become like a real substantial publishing company, is to do sort of young adult literature. And in that circumstance, the illustrations are not as critical. And so I
Mm-hmm.
would love to sort of get into the audio world with that as well.
Okay, that'd be great. And even books on Braille, has that been discussed yet?
Not yet, not yet. That's a pretty tough it's a pretty tough
Mm.
market to get into. That's a whole other
Is it?
series um, of expertise from a technical perspective.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it is. So, was there any inspiration that you draw from authors or books, or something that somebody else was doing, um, that kind of inspired you? You know, kind of like Hillsdale, or some of the other things that we mentioned. I mean, where's the inspiration from? Do you think?
Yeah, so some of it is just the fact that we saw a really big hole in the market, that this just doesn't exist. And I think the closest connection would probably be Tuttle Twins, which is libertarian, and it's run by an organization called Libertas. And they've had wonderful success teaching about economic principles to children. They've sold,
Mm.
I think it's like over 1 million books now. And that's like really kind of it. And none of books of this nature exist. And so we sort of saw the success of Tuttle Twins and said, there is a market for this. If they're selling books about economics to kids, why can't we sell books about Thomas Sowell?
Right, right. So we're kind of coming up at the end of our show. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience? Maybe the website and where to go. And I know that we're just working on a partnership with you guys, so people will be able to go to our website and find you as well. That's not set up yet, but can you tell people just a little bit more for the closing and how they
Yeah.
can learn about it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've done a little bit of media. So if you kind of look on our social media, you can see a segment that I did on Fox and Friends, and Pete Hegseth was really enthusiastic, and he showed a lot of the illustrations, and so you can kind of get a peek through the books by watching that clip. But the only way to get our books right now is heroesofliberty.com. So that's it.
There you go, everyone. So we hope that you enjoyed this show. I certainly did. I've learned a lot. And I'll link to some resources when this is published on December 24th. And we should have this up by 6 p.m. On that date. And we hope you share it with friends and family. And we wish all of you a safe and happy Merry Christmas and happy holidays. Stay safe. And we wish you a happy new year.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Bethany. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Don't forget to rate us and follow us on your podcast player. Check out our show page, radio.newheightseducation.org, for monthly announcements and other happenings.